Welcome to our 13th episode of the DMV Autocross Podcast. I'm Danny Kao.
And I'm Atta Tabesh. Thank you for joining us on our episode number 12. Any interesting news this past week, Danny?
Oh, yes. The most interesting news is this past week is that one of our DC area autocrossers actually finished in the top 5 in SCCA time trial tour at Pocono Raceway. The Facebook time trial page says the 4th place went to Chiapad Tabesh. Any relation to you, Atta? Chiapad Tabesh.
Okay. All right. So I want to clear what's going on here. A few people thought it was funny because I got a haircut and they thought it looked like a chia pet.
Chia.
However, I think my hair looks beautiful, but everyone else was laughing. It was Sarah, Alan, Danny, and then it spread. I think who else was it? It was Matt, Trey. I mean, it got out of hand.
Yeah.
They started calling me a chia pet, and I don't see the resemblance at all. I feel like I look like a very well-groomed gentleman, and they could not stop laughing. I'm talking for hours.
You know, next week you'll be on a Clapper commercial.
Yeah, clap off the Clapper. Yeah, I don't see it. Look at this fresh haircut. For those of you on YouTube, you'll be able to see how fresh this cut looks on the side. Like, it looks good.
I know. Just pour some water in there. We'll poof up.
I'm lined up real nice. If you're listening to us on Spotify or somewhere where you can't actually see this fresh haircut, think of like a Chris Rock or a Will Smith, and dressed up all the way. Denzel. Some people say I look identical to Denzel right now. Just as an idea, the Rock, right? Minus if the Rock had hair, I know he's bald, but somewhere in that neighborhood, that's what my hair looks like. And these people started calling me a chia pet. So
yeah. Anyway, I think the best description for people who can't see is this Atta looks like a chia pet.
No, it's
so we'll move on with the podcast.
Give me the number to 911. I'm going to call them.
Oh, before we move on further, I want to sincerely thank Eric Moody for giving us this awesome T-shirt.
Yeah, this is a milestone, Danny.
That's right. Is a milestone. That means that we're officially sponsored.
We're officially a sponsored podcast. We have these awesome DMV Autocross T-shirts. Eric just dropped them off at my house. He was like, here you go. And they look fantastic. Big shout out to Eric. You're the man.
Well, thank you, Eric. No, I can rely on your contribution for my retirement. No, in all sincerity, thank you. That was great.
Yes, fantastic.
All right, let's move on.
For the next 2 weeks, the autocross schedule is very light around the DMV. This coming Saturday, however, NCC BMW is holding their autocross points event number 3 on the Washington circuit. The normal suspects like Brian Carwin, Patrick Gaffney, Cody Hunt, AJ Aviles, and the DC STR crew will be battling it out. Mohit and Williman will be there to keep everyone honest, though.
Yep. But believe it or not, that's all the local DMV events we have for the next 2 weeks. If you want to drive a little further, Philly and South Jersey both have events on Sunday, June 30th. This and next weekend are also the SCCA National Solo Tour in the Pro Solo in Cleveland, Ohio. A ton of DMV autocrossers will be competing in the Cleveland Pro Solo, including our own Scientologist, Alan, and our awesome on-site reporter, Greg Poe. You can follow the action by going to sololive.scca.com and listen to exciting Pro Solo action. The classes to follow are Super Street, which Gaffney father and son team makes their national debut. Grandpa Norm Flowers will also be there in the mix. C Street will be full of fast DC youngbloods like Julian Garfield, Jack Chrissy, and Jeremy Hubble. Even Obla Sam Versalo will be there.
F Street and STR will be awesome to follow. Brian Slow Carwin will be battling Sam, Fast, Strano, Kaplan, Henry, Salisbury, Pacone, Stockton. They're all going to represent the DMV Autocross in F Street. STR is going to be full of regular DC autocrossers. Alan, Greg Poe, Jen Foe, Steve Mee, Marcus Pye, and Trevor Blah will be fighting it out against top dog Billy Davis and bottom dog Josh Luster. Don't miss it.
Bottom dog Josh Luster. Yes. All right. So the weather is heating up for the rest of the month, and some reports says that most of the country will be over 90 degrees. But no need to fear. We have the most summer accurate weather report next. So let's welcome our own Scientologist, Alan Claffey.
He's a meteorologist, Danny.
He's the Tom Cruise of autocross.
Hi, Danny. Hi, Ada. It's Alan again for the weather. I was supposed to do this at Lime Rock Park, where I was doing a track night afternoon day thing, and I completely forgot about it because it was 1,000 degrees there, and I drove my ass off. So at the end of the day, I left and I said, oh wait, weather. So I didn't do it. So where are we? I don't know. I think this is a high school somewhere between Lime Rock and Pittsfield, Massachusetts. I hope I don't get arrested for doing this, but I shouldn't be. Not up to any bad stuff here. Look, I got a car right here behind me. Let's see a car. Look at this. Look at this. Oh my God, look at that one. Oh my God, it's huge. Okay, back to the weather. It's a fairly light schedule looking ahead to the next week or two. I've got Saturday on the 22nd. BMW CCA is going to be at Summit Point, and it's going to be toasty. 95 degrees with a low of 68, but that low is going to be when you're sleeping, so you won't even notice it. So, hydrate, sunscreen. I think I forgot it. So, lesson learned. So, yeah, 95. Well, have fun with that. We're going to look forward to the weekend of June 29th and 30th. I don't see anything locally happening in the DMV on that weekend. We do have the Cleveland Pro Solo, and there's going to be plenty of DC people around taking advantage of that. And it looks like it's going to be decent there. 86 and 73, sunny on Saturday. 86 and 74, humid on Sunday. I don't see any rain in that forecast. So for people who like to do pro solos like me, and a lot of other DC people, we will probably be there and getting sunburned again. So, on that happy note, I think I'm going to get back in my air-conditioned truck and continue on to the beautiful Berkshires, where I'll be spending the rest of this glorious week. And you guys have fun. Back to Danny and Ada in the studio. Bye.
Thank you, Alan. PCA Potomac held their third event at Summit Point Potomac Pad. The course was extremely challenging and got mixed reviews both on site and online.
The top 10 fastest times were Dave Critcher, Danny Kayo, Patrick Gaffney, Mark Hubley, Howard Lykin, Greg Jones, Kevin Keaty, Vinnie Lee, Dwayne Norman, and Mark Gange. Danny, your opinion on the course wouldn't be related to the fact that Dave crushed you, right?
Maybe. But if that's the case, I would hate every course. Because Dave beat me consistently. So now let's move on to the following week's Mercedes event. With much enthusiasm, I'm super happy that our esteemed field correspondent, Greg Poe, was at the event giving us a report. I asked Greg for a quick summary, and he gave us a 6-minute special reporting for the event. 6 minutes. So without further ado, let's go to the special Father's Day Mercedes event brought to you by Greg Poe. Enjoy.
On June 15th, Father's Day weekend, the Greater Washington section of the Mercedes-Benz Car Club held an event at Summit Point, Washington Circuit. The weather was absolutely beautiful. 70 degrees in the morning, peaking at a high of around 82 by 3 in the afternoon. The Big Wang Gang was represented with energy drinks and snacks. The course was absolutely amazing, using all of the lot, featuring a large slalom down the center and a large sweeping sweeper into the finish. Yes, Adam, we are recording. Yep. Just because it's the Mercedes-Benz Club doesn't mean you have to bring a Mercedes. You'll see cars like this, and this, and this, and this. Drivers are getting ready for their first set of runs, checking their tire pressures, buckling up their helmets, getting their passengers ready, and adjusting their camera equipment. Let's go to the live action and watch Jen Fox take to the course. Even a 1990 Austin Mini is taken to the course. Doesn't accelerate very fast, but it uses all the grip it can. Finishing up morning runs, Patrick Gaffney is in the lead with a 47.9, followed by Greg Pollack with a 48.5. Brian Carwin in third place, 48.8. Matt Huffman in fourth place with a 49.3, and Mike Brown in fifth with a 49.6. Let's go to Patrick and find out how he's doing.
All right, we're here with Patrick Gaffney, FTD for the morning at the Mercedes-Benz Club. Patrick, tell us a little bit about this car you're driving.
This beautiful beast is a 2022 Porsche GT4 with
Porsche
an extra livery of Martini, going back to the good old days.
Beautiful car. Tell us about the key to success on the course.
This course, by the way, was a great course. A lot of flowing, a lot of technical elements of it. I thought it was a great course. The key was staying ahead of it. There were a lot of late apex turns on this course, so we really wanted to get outside, get behind there, so you could expand on the straightaways. So that was it for me, just keeping it under control.
So we've got runs this afternoon. Any predictions for this afternoon? Do you think you're going to drop time?
Hell, I'm on yokes, man. I'll be putting ice baths on these tires, but I'm hoping. On my last run, I did get a cone, was even quicker, so I'm hoping to get somewhere again in the 47s.
All right, that Brian Ka, he's here as well. Do you think he's got a chance in his Mero to catch you?
Well, I tell you, he's already reaching for the PAX indicator. So I'm not so sure he's thinking FTD, he's thinking PAX.
All right, thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
In the afternoon, the course was much grippier, and a lot of competitors dropped times. Unfortunately, this reporter had to leave early. Special shout out to Dustin for grabbing the videos. As for the results, in first place, Patrick Ga was able to drop time, going from a 47.9 all the way down to a 47.0. He was able to clean up that cone. First loser, Brian Ka, in his Camaro SS1 LE, I hear it's a cheater automatic car, went from a morning best of 48.8 down to a 47.8. I wonder if dropping that second was a prototype rear sway bar. I'm sure that had nothing to do with it. In third place, Matt Hu in the RX-8 went from a 49.3 down to a 48.3. Falling all the way down into fourth place was Greg Poe, who stayed at a 48.5, but reports are if he had stayed in the afternoon, he would have been FTD for sure. In fifth place, Mike Burr in his supercharged MX-5 went from a 49.6 down to a 49.1. In sixth place, Austin Ha in a Subaru STI finished with a 49.4. Seventh place, Rex Uhl in an M3 finished with a 49.7. In eighth place, Dustin Gurr in a Civic Si finished with a 49.7 as well. Josh Ba in a 1990 Miata finished with a 49.8. In 10th place, Curtis Hu in a WRX finished with a 49.8. In fact, I hear the entire Hu family is pretty fast, as his dad Charles Hu finished in 34th place out of the 68 drivers in attendance. For the DMV Autocross Podcast, this has been Greg Poe. Back to you in the studio.
Because he gave us the Father's Day highlight, do we have to call him Daddy?
No.
Okay, good. All right, sorry. All right.
Yeah, Daddy will be Norm Flowers, because you might get a GT3 when you do that.
Oh no! Oh my God!
Don't ask Norm to get free rides, guys. You know who you are. Stay off.
Are people bothering Norm?
Yes,
They got to go through me.
That's
Send
right.
them my way.
yeah. You got to go through Norm's real son, Chia Pet Atta.
That's not. No, I'm just saying. I'm gonna protect him. I'm gonna protect. We need to all step up and protect this glorious man. He's a gem, and I need to protect him.
Yeah, watch it, or else you'll be full of Chia Pets at home. So,
oh my God, that's not what's the worst. For our feature of the week, we will continue to poke Daniel to cough up his secrets in video and data building and rendering. Today, we'll be discovering how Daniel generates his cool F1 style autocross videos. For those who haven't seen Daniel's videos, every one of his videos starts with an F1 style race banner, just like a real F1 race. And the video includes custom gauges, race info, including sector times, plus previous lap times. And it's totally wild. So first, Daniel, thank you again for being here. And let's get into it. Let's talk about the process of how to create your videos after you've raced.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing to really realize about Race Render is that it's primarily designed to take data that you already have and overlay it on top of video that you've got. So if you don't have the data, you're not really going to get very far. But if you have the data, you can actually make some really cool stuff, and sometimes you don't need all that much in order to make it look really cool on the other end. Not everyone is going to be into doing a lot with custom video on the other side of things. So maybe you're just going to export directly out of your app, and that's perfectly fine. Maybe you can get a lot of viewers because you've got a recent mini one-lap win Gata has, or his infectious personality. Or maybe you're like Alan, and you've got an entire fleet of amazing drivers and his cryptology skills.
No, cryptologist. Now he's showing off his trophy.
He's a meteorologist, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. Or maybe if you're like Danny and or me and you're, maybe not fast, but you're especially curious.
We're just various.
Then we can get you some tips too.
Hey, you know what? Awesome. While you're there, I'm gonna brag about my trophy. Hold on.
I love it. I love it, Daniel, that we're interviewing you and we're just running away grabbing stuff to show from our house.
Of course.
Can you see?
Oh yeah.
That's pretty cool.
This is a real one.
Man.
Yeah. But you know what? Brian Highcotero did all the driving. I just drove him around. So,
Danny, if I'm not mistaken, you actually you were behind the steering wheel longer than he was.
Oh, yeah. I drove all 4,000 miles. He drove all 200 miles, but all his points counts. Mine doesn't.
If it wasn't for your driving, you would have never made it to the events.
Well,
right?
if it was for me, if it was me driving, I would have wanted like a small, tiny stuffed animal. That's what I would have get. All right. So sorry, Daniel. We're jumping the shark here. So,
it happens. Yeah. So we're gonna come in here. We're gonna open up Race Render. We're gonna open up one of my recent videos that will hopefully be posted before this actually goes live. That's in the plans here. And you're gonna notice that I've got data all over the place. So you can watch these videos like 6 or 7 times back to back to back, look at a different spot in the video and just get different information every single time. Or at least that's my goal anyway.
Well, that's kind of what I do on your video. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of this is just kind of going and iterating over year after year, saying, all right, what can I do to make this better? What other data can I get in here in order to just provide a little bit more information? Was I a little slower here or faster there? What was happening with the car here? What does the track map look like? What am I going to be looking for in 10 seconds from now? Things like that. So really, I would encourage anyone that's first getting into Race Render to just go in here, throw your video up, throw whatever data you've got in there, and start looking at some of the display objects. So the display objects here, you've got the display objects. So this is where the data gets translated from all the numbers that are in your giant spreadsheet into actual graphics that are on the page. So like you can add a track map here, just grab something here. So this automatically takes all your GPS coordinates and plops them down on your map. And then you'll notice that this display object properties thing comes up over on the right-hand side. So that is where all the customization happens. So you can draw the map, you can choose your resolution. If you got your external GPS, maybe you can go with extreme, like I've got here. You can change the style of the start finish. Maybe you want it to be a bullseye. Maybe you don't care what it looks like. Maybe you just want that. Maybe you want to display the progress that you've already made through the course. So you can choose that with the color progress. The vehicle position, you can choose if you want a drone or you want an airplane, or you just want a car or something like that. But you can also shade it if you want to as well, if you want to choose the elevation or your speed. If you draw the map with a green shade and then you choose the speed with a red shade, it gives you this nice kind of yellow, orange, red. When you're going slower, it's red, but when you're going faster, it's green. I like that style for my videos. But there are a ton of options in here for pretty much anything that you want here.
So green is not the acceleration, but just rather the base course color?
So if you render the base course color as green, it's going to apply red where you're slowing down to everywhere else. So I literally was at the red limiter through this entire section here.
Sure.
So I was accelerating through all,
right.
I was at the max speed through all.
I was just curious because I just always assumed that the green means that you're on throttle, but the fact that it's actually just the base course color, that on throttle value is just not being displayed, so that defaults into it's accelerating.
It is based on your speed itself.
It's
so
not
if
accelerating.
you're going fast, you might not have your foot on the throttle. Chances are you do, but you might not.
I see.
Well,
So
I think it'd be velocity, not acceleration. So like
correct.
the yellow would be like acceleration, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's where you're
start of the yellow.
from.
Yeah. Yellow to green, but then green to yellow is deceleration.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well that's interesting. I just wasn't sure. Like when I'm looking at some of these maps, and I always made the assumption that green means you're on full throttle, yellow means that you're partial throttle, and red you're on brake. And that's kind of what my assumption was.
I mean, it's going to be shifted slightly. Like I'm not braking all the way through this turn right here. I'm braking before the turn, but I'm going a lot slower through that turn. So that's why it's red in that particular section there.
Got it. Cool.
So you've got your track map, you've got speedometer. This one is relatively straightforward, but it's the same sort of thing. You put this down, it's going to automatically pick what it thinks is the right field to choose, which should be your speed field. Sometimes that's just calculated through your GPS. Sometimes you can automatically grab it from the field that you've got, which might not necessarily be exactly the same. If you've got some wheel spin or your GPS coordinates aren't lining up exactly with what your car thinks you're doing, sometimes they might be slightly different. But generally, it's going to be pretty close, and it's not going to matter that much. You've got a bunch of different options here. If you wanted to change to like a pointer here instead of a needle, you could do that. If you wanted to choose some of the other options here, those are also available. A lot of this is also available in the gauge designer. So if you click this guy, this is kind of a preview of what we're going to look at next time with creating your custom gauges in here. You've got a ton of different options in here. This is more in depth than most of the other different display objects that you have. But there are a ton of options here that we'll start to look at next time as well. So next, you've got the G-force, you've got lap counters and timers, you've got a text data option. So if you have something like mileage or ambient temperature that I've got on my dashboard here, you can just do that with just simple text data. Or if you want static text, you can also do that up here too. If you want just a generic gauge or like your accelerator throttle position, you can do that with a bar graph here. That's typically what I see people doing there. But there's also an option for displaying a graph. So if you got like a speed graph here, I'm going to add a second one, put it pretty much in the same spot here, and then say, all right, well, the top one, I want to take out the backing, and I want to change this from lap 3 to lap 1 because I've got a separate data file for my first lap here. I'm going to change that first lap to be red. And the third lap to be blue. Take out any kind of merging of the colors here. And all of a sudden I've got a speed trace right here of my best lap versus my previous lap. So that's really handy on like the comparison videos. So it's not just one display object. You can actually combine that with other display objects on top of each other to kind of get a better idea of what's going on in the data as well.
That's great.
And there are other options here if you want the line to be a little, or the entire display object to be a little shorter or thicker, you can do that. If you want the line to be thinner, you can do that. There are tons and tons of options in here. So if you're just trying to get familiar with what is out there, what's available, just go ahead and just add a display object and look at the properties that it's got. See what you like. That might not necessarily be the same as what I enjoy on my videos, but there are so many different options here. You could be doing this for hours and hours and still not get through all of them. There are also options like I have for the sector lines and the start-finish line, because sometimes the map doesn't exactly look the way that I want it to. You can add an embedded image here. The best way to do that is actually to go from File, Add Embedded Image to Project here, and then we'll take whatever the thumbnail I'm going to use for this video, and then that adds it directly as an image on here, and you can resize this just the way you would with any of the other display objects. If you've got like a little checkered finish line, you can rotate it if you want with editing the background and then rotating like that.
Yeah.
And then this just moves around just like anything else would. Once you have that, you can export that as a race render object, just like some of the others they've got here, and then you can reuse that in other templates and projects that you've got in the future. So that can be very handy as well. The last category here in the display objects is the enhanced display object, and this is where a lot of the magic happens. So a lot of the custom stuff that I'm doing with the lap list and the sector times and all that is all done through code specifically here. So coming in, I can add lap lists here, I can add gear displays. I've got my temperature gauge that I coded up here. There was somebody on the Race Render forums was asking for a lap list inside of one of their GT3 displays. So I had come up with a little display here that kind of displayed that lap list inside one of the circles there, as if you were like cycling through it on your dashboard. That was pretty fun.
So it looks like it's on the dash.
Exactly. Yes.
That's okay.
So that was pretty cool.
All right. So can I bug you to make a tire pressure logo? No, I'm just kidding.
Something like that can happen.
You know, Ada's tire pressure monitor actually has the temperatures.
Yep.
Which is the wildest thing. Each tire.
It's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
I've seen somebody had a display object that they had 16 different stripes of their tire where they had individual, temperature monitor sensors across the entire tire to see, when I'm cornering really hard, turning left, you can see the outside of the tire light up red and the inside's still, not really doing much. So that was pretty cool. You can do a whole bunch in here. If you have any sort of even basic programming knowledge, you can kind of get a lot out of what is available here. You'll notice some of the sector times that I've got here have kind of the text overlay, and then the background is kind of separate because the actual background itself has a transparency filter separate from the actual overlay. So if I wanted the background to be completely transparent, I could make it like that, but still see the text data there. So that's kind of what I'm doing by having two separate things where I'm once again combining two different display objects to make it look a little bit nicer. So maybe you might not notice that, it's still mostly mostly visible, not transparent here.
It's just a little opaque. Yeah.
But you can kind of get a little glimpse of what's going on behind that, but it doesn't distract you from the actual data that it's displaying. So I personally like something like that where it's got a little bit of hidden stuff to it like that. But so I think the thing that everyone's looking forward to is the lap list here and the sector times here. So we're going to close this down and make sure I don't save over top of the hard work I've been doing there. And then we're going to come to this website, hobo-bob.com, because that's the screen name I've been using since I was like 12 years old. So that's you're just going to have to live with that. But I've been putting together this website so that you can take even just the times that you get from an event that they publish. Everyone publishes everything at the end of an event. You get your times for all the laps or runs that you've done. And you can turn that into those actual display objects using a data file that you get from this website. So some of the first things that you'll have to do, only the first time that you've come through here, you'll have to download the templates themselves. This is kind of a display or just a link over to Race Render itself. But the templates are available in this link here. You'll see a little zip file here that has the individual templates that I've got, as well as the foreground and background objects here. So you'll need to unzip this into your documents folder. If you're on Mac OS, then you'll figure out where you need to put it there too. You'll also need the fonts because Race Render uses the fonts that you have on your system. So you'll need to download this and double click each of these in order to install each of those. I was able to grab these fonts from somewhere off of the internet that I don't know if it's still available there, but I've got it here, at least until I get a, DMC, a takedown notice or whatever. So cease and desist.
Cease and desist.
Get it while it's still here.
While it's hot.
Exactly. So if you've got data from Race Chrono, you can come into this formatter section and drag that CSV onto here and kind of go through relatively the same process. But we're going to treat this like you don't have any data at all. You're coming in here completely blind, unsure you've got any data at all. You've just got a little bit of shaky video, and then that's about it. So if you click on this Composer tab right here, you just see two steps here. There's putting in all your lap data, and then there's downloading it. So you can come in here. If you're running a track session or something like that, you can add individual session or individual laps within a section. But we're going to be looking at autocross, so we care about adding one individual lap per session because you don't cross the finish line and immediately start the next lap in an autocross. That kind of, you've got some cool down time in between. Even in Pro Solo, you've still got plenty of time between runs. So we're going to come in here. So I know that my times for the Charlotte event, I had a 57.38 on my first run. I had a 57.481 on my second run, and then a 57.169 on my third run, but I hit a cone in that one. So I'm going to add a penalty here with a +2. So I can change that to, DNF or off course or something like that, but it was just a cone call. So do that, and you'll notice that this little best versus previous tag here, that kind of changed around as I added the individual laps there. So you kind of got some idea of the website thinks is your fastest lap versus what was actually your fastest lap. But coming in here, let's go ahead and open up Race Render because we're going to need some additional data. We can't just go directly from those times to something that's going to be super easy to use. So we need somewhere where we can get millisecond times. So if we just go and use a simple video template, add that video in, we can kind of see the milliseconds down here in the bottom. So if I scroll through here a little bit, it's a little too far. So I can see I'm pretty close here. So if I pause right here, I've got different options here for stepping forward. There's kind of just a single one here, and there's like a double one here. If you hold down the shift, that will go at half speed. So one click of this without holding anything is going forward one frame at 30 frames per second. But if you're recording your video in 60 frames per second, you need to hold down that left shift in order to just go a single frame at a time here. So I can see I crossed the line basically about here. I think for the pre-recorded times that I've already looked at, I'm gonna shift that a little bit. So I can see it at 1 minute and 21 seconds and 22 milliseconds or so. I broke the beam here pretty close anyway. So this is my third lap. So I'm going to come in here, 121.022. And then you can see kind of the sector times got updated here as well. For the sectors, I just kind of choose a spot somewhere about a third of the way through. When I'm coming through here, I like to pick somewhere where I'm still on throttle. So you can kind of hear that I'm still on throttle through coming out of that corner here. So coming in here, I was about, let's go one more, maybe two more, thereabouts. So somewhere where the cone is lining up with my mirror, that's an easy way to point out, all right, that's exactly where I'm at when I'm crossing that particular sector line, we'll call it. For the times that I've got pre-recorded, that's going to be pretty close to that, but not exact. I'm going to add some extra sectors here. 42.527 is what I've got written down over here. So that's the first sector. And coming along here, somewhere over here, that's pretty close. So I think right here in my secondary video, you can see where my right mirror is crossing a cone right about here. So that's where I recorded my sector time there. So that's 66.45, and then that displays nicely. But I also hit a cone in here. My cone was somewhere around here. So this cone right here, I'm going to clobber right now. Book. So come back here, thereabouts, right about there is when I hit that cone. So keeping this absolute time down here, the time I've got recorded was that. So I'm going to come in here. You would do the same thing for the previous lap that you're comparing to. Generally, you're going to do this for your best lap and then compare it to whatever was the best lap prior to that. I'm going to do this for my third lap, which was technically faster, but I did hit that cone, so I'm going to not worry about that for now. So coming in here, looking at this earlier, I had a 45.602 and a 69.034. So now I've got all the times, all the laps, the sectors, the cones that I hit. So now this should spit out a data file for me that I can actually use. So I clicked next, and I clicked the download button, and then I got this zip file here that's got different timing files. And then if I wanted to come back later and grab all those times and not have to retype them in every time, there's actually an import button here that should work for grabbing that data as well. So if I click on that, I can actually drag that configuration file in there, and it would automatically load all those times again if you had any need to. You shouldn't need to, but if you did, you have that option available to you. So coming in here, I'm going to copy those files over to here. We're going to delete that from our initial test before that did not work so well, but now we've got this going. So now we're going to open up Race Render again. We're going to use this F122 template that you supposedly downloaded from the website earlier while it's still available. And when you click on that, you'll see a video and a data option. So obviously you grab your video, put that in the video one, and then you'll grab the timing data file here and put that in the data file. So now when you come in here, you should see automatically you should see the 3 laps up here that you've already inputted. You should see your previous best sector time here that might be this is relative to the lap. It's not the absolute time within your data file. So that's going to be slightly different than whatever you actually entered. But this should be automatically synchronized. You shouldn't have to go into the synchronization tool and move things around. Everything should be ready to go exactly because you put in, this is when I crossed the line, and everything's kind of relative to that. So if I'm going to skip forward here a little bit, I'm starting to accelerate right here. And as soon as I cross the line, the timer starts.
Yeah.
And as I'm crossing here, you can see the next sector comes right through here, right before I hit that cone.
Oh,
Clunk, and then you get this little pop up here, and then the +1 happens right there.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Even if
I
you're,
love that. I love that, actually.
Even if you're hitting a cone, that's still pretty cool. Across your sector here, I was a little bit slower, but also that +2 from the cone really hurts there. And as I'm coming across the line, I took one of those corners a lot better, and if I hadn't missed the shift to third, I would have even better than that. And you can see that, all right, we've no longer got the lap as it's currently happening, so the white section goes away here, and if it was your fastest lap, this one would disappear and the green would come here.
Yep.
Now, if you have a cone on your fastest lap, I'm not sure I accounted for that. I figure you're probably going to have at least one that's clean, and that should be your fastest lap, unless you're Marcus Pine and you just cone every single run.
No, I actually have
these buttons or something.
I actually have a real question. I mean, it was just interesting you just said, right? I mean, you actually stole my thunder.
Oh,
because I was going to ask, what's the maximum amount of cone numbers that you can record per run?
Yes.
Is it high enough for Marcus Pine or Greg Pollack?
Right.
To use?
Right. Do we have a limit, really?
There is a limit because I can't just loop through. I don't have the 4 loops that
if
are
it's
available.
nine, it's not
any
enough.
kind of ring.
It's not enough. It needs to be in the double digits there, Daniel.
If you hit more than 9 cones, I'm not going to be able to handle that here. So if you once you get to 10, 11, 12, that's going to start to be looked at as you ran off course.
So coming into this,
DNF.
Daniel, I thought this was going to be for everyone, but it seems like it's for everyone except for our 2 friends. And Greg, Okay.
Once you get up to there, once you get to that level, maybe you're not as worried about how many cones you're hitting. It's more about collecting as many cones as you can.
That's right.
Yeah.
And trying to break the code that I'm putting out here to help everyone.
Yeah, that how the cone would start multiplying. It's almost like slot machine, like falling down.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty amazing.
I was thinking more like Pokemon. You got to catch them all, right?
Yeah.
Hit every
Yeah,
single one
exactly.
That is awesome.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, so we've done maybe 5 minutes of work here, and we've already got our sectors, we've got a run. I'm going to come a little bit further and then add this red flag here, and then you can create the video right from here. You can save it if you want. Some of the other options that you've got are, hey, I've got a 3-digit number here with my two-digit class, if I could actually speak. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this guy here and show or click visible or auto here for the active drop down. And all of a sudden this box is a little bit bigger, and I can come in and throw a 1 at the front here.
Right.
Now the race render doesn't handle the italics very well, so there is technically a space here at the end, so make sure you keep that, otherwise it doesn't quite look the way it should. But if you keep that space here, suddenly you got your 3 digits there. Or say, actually, I'm running STH or something. I need my 3-digit or 3-character class name. I can do that too. So if I come in here, hide this guy, show my 3-character 3-digit, I can change my class over to STH, and then that displays a little bit nicely as well. It's a little bit more busy with the 3-character class and the 3-digit number, but it's still those options are available there. You don't have to do anything special there. So those are also available as well if that is something that suits you. And then once you got that, I'm just going to not save that. You'll want to make sure that your picture size is correct for whatever video that you've been saving. I do the 2.7K videos, so my picture size is good here. I do the 60 frames per second. That's close enough. Click start, save it, and then it goes off and does whatever it needs to.
So Daniel, I noticed that I went to the Race Render website, and I noticed that we're up to Race Render 3. Is that what you're using for all this?
Correct. So there technically has not been a new version for several years at this point.
Yeah, many years
official Race Render support is maybe not as much as I would like, which is part of the reason I try to be very active on the Race Render forums. So anyone that's asking questions that's like, hey, how can I make a gauge that looks like this? I try to be very helpful there, try and put that together for them, because I want more people to continue to use Race Render so that hopefully they'll see that it's an important product and worth supporting. I have thought about throwing my hat in the ring for I'll do some part-time work for them to kind of get like the sector support that that should be baked in here. That they have that in Track Addict. Race Render should really support that, but they never got around to doing that. I don't know if COVID kind of played into that or what exactly, but also I've got 11-month-old at home, so my time is maybe a little slightly more limited than I would have had prior to that. So I'm kind of focusing on that at the moment, and I'll get to this a little bit later.
Oh yeah, Race Under 3 has been around for probably 10 years now, I would think.
Wow.
I think so.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. Because I remember I started using Race Under 2 back into the
70s?
in the beginning of 2010.
2010s. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In the 70s, it was probably Race Render 1.5 or something.
Yeah. I didn't know if you started using the Race Render with those crank films, like when you first started autocrossing.
No, it's more of the how they make they use like shadow technology.
They stamped the stone right on it.
Yeah,
that's how they did it.
Something like that.
Got it. Makes sense.
Now, was that before the Star Wars Death Star, or was that after episode?
That
4?
was probably before the Death Star.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, I heard Star Wars was a long time ago, so that was.
It was
Okay.
in a galaxy far away too.
Okay. Oh, got it. Okay.
So it's not exactly correlated to our time.
You got to remember, Death Star didn't come out until what do you call it? The episode 6, right? So by that time, you guys were probably born already, which is, that's probably why the star died. No, I'm just kidding.
Daniel, you crushed that cone. I watched it in real time. We've been going kind of slowly, but you annilated that poor cone.
I kept my foot in it. I'm like, I know I can go full throttle through here and not lift and be fine. And I got a little behind in the slalom, and then maybe I didn't quite do that.
Yeah.
Then I missed that shift there, and then dropped a couple of other tenths there. But
it's funny.
Okay.
Danny and I have been watching this video for a long time, right? How many times have we been watching this video? I don't think I've ever seen it in full speed until just now.
Yeah.
That was a good run, though. It was a good run.
It's a pretty good run.
Yeah, it was a good run.
Hey, Daniel, can we cover the actual banner? I mean, not the banner, but the title.
Yeah, so I'm mostly keeping the stuff that I do. It's a little bit more complicated, but we can take a look at what it would be needed in order to make that work.
Just kind of just go through it and give people an idea of if they have to do it themselves, what's involved.
So I'm kind of playing off of the data file stuff again. So I've got a display file that comes along with, if you're using a race chrono file, you'll just get this display CSV file here as well. Let me grab that here. So it's a really tiny file. All it does is have a few individual columns here and a little bit of data to kind of say, all right, for the first second to 1.5 seconds, for the first second, it's got 0 transparency. For 1 to 1.5 seconds, it goes from 0 to 1. So I can kind of use that to create a display that says, all right, once I get past a second, keep track of where this value is, and then expand the horizontal space according to that. But then the banner here, I've got different fonts, and I've got the logo here. So I've got an enhanced display image here. This is using the display input with a transparency field that I put together there. So it kind of starts at 0 and goes to 1. I just use this data proportional image mode. But that, in combination with the output type of transparency, that's the one, that takes it from being completely transparent to actually displaying.
Right.
So all I have to do is just say, all right, once I have that display file, then I'm good to go. I can just plug in everything there. And
the reason I'm so interested in that is because the only race render knowledge that I'm good at is just adding a text box and select a size 32 font. I mean, and then throw what it is, and then I go into I add another sort of a time slot or whatever, and then I erase that. So that's how how I get the title. So this is fantastic.
So I'm actually doing all this through an enhanced display object. So I've got my open script editor here. I've got kind of my colors and everything. I've got my fonts that I'm using here. A lot of this will take the background script. I've kind of got various different stadiums and locations that I use relatively often through here. Set kind of the title size and sizes that I'm going to use for the fonts. And then I've got a foreground script that kind of goes through here and says, all right, I've got, while it's starting to shift, make sure that it's not actually displayed, but then displayed after that. And then some of the other stuff here that I don't think I display this stuff. This is kind of the background stuff that still has that transparency piece here. But all I really do is come in each event and just change this org and the group here and the stadium and location. But then I also have to come to the next one and change the date and the event number, and that'll change those two. And I kind of came up with this somewhat complicated algorithm to kind of display some kind of roll up for, cycle through the numbers beforehand. So when you're starting this, it starts at some kind of lower number here, like 73, and then shifts up to the number that it's supposed to go to. That was like a Formula One. They were counting up to race 1000 or whatever. I was like, oh, that's amazing. I want to keep track of all the autocrosses that I've done and kind of keep a number tally. And then, as soon as they got past 1000, they immediately abandoned all that. So, well, I think it's still cool, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Yes. So now is number 81 how many autocrosses you've been to?
Yes, so that's the number of events that I've been to throughout my career.
Okay.
So I think yes, this was event number 81 for me. So it might be something like Susquehanna had 2 events back to back. So I just on the same course, they had a morning and an afternoon.
Sure, that would be considered 2.
Well, I considered it just one event because I'm running the same event.
Oh, I see.
So I was like, all right, that's close enough.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But
this one, it's one event because I had to sign up once for both of these. So I figured, all right, day 1, day 2, that's still one event.
Right. So I think Ada and I started roughly the same time, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. How many have you? What's your guesstimate of how many events you have?
Me compared to like 50 max.
50.
Yeah.
I think I bet you I'm in between 600 to 700s.
Yeah. Easy.
Yeah.
That's not even don't compare me to you.
Come on, aren't we the same age? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, practically. I feel a little bit older than you sometimes.
Yeah. I get it. All right. So Daniel, before we wrap this up, I know you're gonna let us steal all your stuff. So,
that's the plan.
So can you tell our listeners how we can steal all your stuff?
Yeah, so you come to this hobo-bob.com website, you click on the home option if it's not already there, and the 2 hyperlinks to download the template, the styles are right here, and download the fonts that are needed are right there. You unzip those, install the fonts just by double-clicking them, install the template and the styles by just copying those into your documents folder. And then the next time you open Race Render, yes.
Inside Race Render, there's a doc folder.
Yes.
Okay.
So if I come to my documents folder here, I've got a whole bunch of stuff for various other things, but there is a Race Render 3 folder here. And in the zip file, there will also be a Race Render 3 folder. So you should be able to just copy paste it directly in here and get everything in here.
Okay.
And once you've got that, the next time you open Race Render, you should have those options for the lap list and the sectors, and especially that template here, that F122 template. Probably be here because you likely don't have a Civic Autocross template there that I made for Dustin.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're gonna steal that one. No.
Yeah.
That one's I put together as quickly as possible because I had to get that out pretty quickly. But I don't know. If I start co-driving with him, then maybe I'll put some more effort into that one.
All right. So for all our listeners, the place where you can steal Daniel's secret is www.hobo-bob.com. So that's where you get all the.
And you need to put those W's in.
Yeah, that's where all you get all the fancy stuff. Well, I'll be on the site like right after this and go steal everything from it.
Oh, I'm already stealing everything. I just installed the fonts just now. You double click them and then you install your little open type thing opens up, and you just smash install. It should say steal, not install, but whatever.
Yes, no, that would be great. All right, so thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing your secrets on how to build your cool videos. We're going to hold you hostage just until the next feature segment, where Daniel is going to show us how to create custom gauges for your own car using Race Render, and we know that you'll be tuning in for that one. And thank you so much again, Daniel.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Glad to help some other fellow autocrossers out, make some awesome videos.
Okay,
That's
Daniel,
great.
before we leave, one last question. I'm sorry, I'm like bothering you now. I just downloaded those fonts onto my computer. Are you telling me I can use those fonts everywhere now, not just Race Render?
That is correct. If you wanted to create a PowerPoint presentation for your job that has Formula One fonts, Formula One like Formula One style fonts, stylized fonts, you can do that. It's there. It's on your computer. You can use that for anything you want.
So I have a follow-up question. I have a follow-up question. So Daniel, I went to a interview recently, and they asked me, seriously, one of the questions they asked me during the interview is, can you give me an example of using coding to increase your productivity at the place of your work? Can I just paste my head into your head and then run through the last segment?
Hey, if it gets you a job, you should do that. Like, that's great. I actually did for some of my jobs, actually a number of years ago. At this point, when I was first starting to put this together, I was taking some of these data files and crunching through them and feeding them into just learning how to use a different form of software that's going to crunch on CSV files that were hundreds of megabytes in size. Taking some of the data that I had from a recent autocross and just sending that to my work email and then actually working on that on my work computer. So that was actually, I have used this for professional means as well. But some of the actual code here is more of a, kind of some of what I had done at work, kind of try and figure out, all right, how can I play with that? How can I make that better? How can I better learn that on my own in order to help myself at work too? So this is kind of the culmination of probably 4 or 5 years of coding practice in between, an hour at a time across about 5 years or so.
So actually, I just thought about the better answer should be, hey, I know a friend of mine named Daniel. You should hire him instead of me.
That's awesome. And one last thing. Again, like this is like a work meeting now where we just keep going. One last thing.
Adam's trying to steal, like before you know it, he's going to steal your babies or something. You better be careful now.
I don't want to steal baby. I have so many of my own. I don't need any more. All right, so Daniel, I don't know if this is appropriate, so we can maybe cut this part out if it's inappropriate. But what's the last 4 digits of your phone number?
We'll get to that one offline.
Okay, I confirmed without checking your number because it asks you that in the little on the top right hand corner or top left hand corner of your website. Yeah, so I okay, we'll you just confirm without confirming.
All right, we'll cut that part out. No worries.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was for the donate button. It asks for his phone number.
Technically, if you want to do that, yes, that is set up to if you want to buy me a beer, want to buy me percentage.
I did it without confirming your phone number, but I was just like, because it was, and then you have to. I was like, I don't know his phone number. What you talking about?
Yes, that is set up to Venmo me whatever, like $5 or whatever. If you click that and click through everything, I recommend doing that. multiple times. 10, 20, 100 times.
Okay, so
something like that.
Into the
so
podcast,
now that's going to be all of a sudden that's back in the podcast.
Or how about we just don't cut any of it?
Yeah. No, I won't cut any of them. I'll tell you, the only reason that I wasn't sure is because I need to wear my glasses to see exactly what it says on so tiny little icons. I'm doing this on a tiny computer. So
if you hold down the control button,
and
then you zoom in with your scroll wheel,
scroll up, baby.
You can zoom in really far here, so you can.
So there it is, right next to the heart. That's the part I was deep in there. I was deep in there.
Yeah, right there.
I see. Oh, okay. I see. I got it.
Button.
Okay. Yeah.
And
everybody
then it takes you to Venmo, and you throw them some dollars.
All right. So everybody smash
it's
the donate button, and then do that for every episode.
I already did. I'm first. I'm probably the first one to ever donate to his ass. I mean,
that's probably true.
All right. Great. Thank you. And then thank you, Daniel.
Awesome.
We'll see you at
Daniel.
that very next segment, then very next one. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So you're not getting rid of us yet.
Not yet.
Oh, definitely not.
All right. Okay. Thanks so much.
For our Meeting a New Autocross Friend segment, I'm happy to introduce our Autocross power couple, Jen Fox and Greg Pollack, as our new Autocross friends. Yay!
Yay, Autocross friends.
Jen and Greg started autocrossing around 10 years ago, and through constant competition and hard work, both are now running at the top in local STR classes and in contention at SCCA Nationals. Jen just finished at the top of her class at the New Jersey Pro, and Greg trophied in STR. Let's find out how they found success right now. So thank you both for joining us. Thanks guys.
for having us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I've known you both for a long time, and I cannot keep track. When and how did you both start autocrossing? Who started it first?
So I initially started, I had a Mazda 3, and a buddy I worked with, Alex Reddick, he was like, let's go autocrossing. And I was like, sure, let's do it. So we went out to Capital Driving Club, and we did very, very poorly in our slow cars with all seasons, and it started the obsession from there.
I was in grad school and I worked 7 days a week for like 5 years and finally got to go out and hang out and watch and ride along. And I think I showed up to 1 or 2 events and rode along and was like, oh, this is dumb. I don't want to just ride along. And I never really liked Miatas. I thought they were kind of dumb looking. And then as soon as I rode in one, I was like, oh, I get it. Okay. And we started shopping for Miatas.
It all clicked, right? Like one ride along.
Like them. Yeah.
That's great.
There's an amazing story about your first ride along.
Let's hear it.
Ed Sheeran convinced me that I should go and ride along with Larry Casey because he thought I should ride along with somebody fast and see what it's really like. And I showed up and Larry clearly did not want a stranger hopping in the car with him, and he was completely silent, and I was like, oh no, he does not want me riding with him.
Larry Casey was silent?
He was silent. But then he like sat FTD with me in the car, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need a Miata. And now Larry's a great buddy. So.
That's great. Okay, so between the two of you, who has the bigger influence in participating in this hobby? I mean, I guess it's Jen because she's already ready to race, and Greg is chilled and just hits cone for fun, right? So prove me wrong.
I think the problem is we both really want to win, and we both really like to compete. So it's like we each push each other to do more and to go harder and to build the better car.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of like, oh, well, the car's not fully prepped. We'll like, well, watch me. We'll fully prep it. It's like, oh, we don't have a fresh setup. We'll go get one. So it's sort of a competition between each other who can prep and have the best car, and then we both drive them. And I think Jen pushes for more national events.
Yeah, I really like going out and, running as many pros as we can and getting to see everyone and compete at a really high level with other people. I also like getting out to as many locals as possible, as long as it's not cold or raining.
We'll talk about that later.
But yeah, I think we both like to race a lot, and it's helpful because that's all of our vacations is going and racing. So that would be challenging, I think, if we didn't both do it.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you're almost like two wings, like you're each a wing of one bird flapping together.
100%. It
to
makes
fly.
it way easier too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
When you can split all the jobs and the things you have to do,
The problem is we're both excited about prepping a different car at the same time. So like we'll be building one car and then it'll be like, oh, now we need parts for this car.
That's great.
So we were pulling out of this event and he was like, you gotta drive slower on this gravel road, it's a prepped race car. And I was like, it's a semi-prepped race car. And he was like, don't threaten me with a good time. So there's probably some more STI parts in the cart right now.
So that's a perfect segue into the next question about cars. So the next big question I have before we get into the driving side of things is, how many cars have you been through since you started autocrossing?
That's actually classified.
How many cars do you currently have then?
Also classified. No, we have 8 if you count the truck.
8? Wow.
I don't count the truck.
And there's just 2 of you.
Yeah. Yep.
And is it true that you guys move like houses, like where you live, just to find bigger parking lots?
It does seem like that.
So yes?
Parking in a garage is a key part of where you live right now. Yeah.
A lot of juggling with 8 cars when you finally get a nice day and you're like, I need the S2000, but it's all the way at the back of the pack. So it's like 15 minutes before you can leave for work, but it's worth it when you hit VTEC.
Oh, nice. VTEC, my heart. Okay, so who works on the car more? I've seen Jen wrenching away at the car at events, and I've seen Greg sitting down in chairs drinking pina coladas.
Yes.
So who's more mechanical between the two of you?
I think different parts. I do a lot of our suspension stuff just because I was stubborn and wanted to learn how to do it and did. So I think at events, adjusting the car, that's probably more me. tried to learn from Brian when we co-drove with Brian Carwin. I learned as much as I could about turning on the knobs. I'm part of the way there. And then in between, I think it's kind of both of us. It depends on the car and the job. Suspension stuff I'm very comfortable with. Greg has forayed into more engine and other things that I'm not quite as comfortable with yet.
I actually do remember a few weeks ago I saw Greg filling the STI with E85 only using one finger. Is that true as well? I saw you using with one finger.
I was, yes.
It was
yes.
very impressive. I've never seen anyone fill a car up with E85 using only one finger.
It's an important finger.
Yeah, I'm serious. Like, it was actually very impressive.
So when it's working on cars, I'm not allowed to do things that involve numbers. So if we're adjusting the shocks, I always want to turn the wrong shock the wrong direction. If it's adjusting the camber or caster or doing the toe in the car, I'm not allowed to measure things.
Got it.
Because I look at it, it's like, that's a 20. And she's like, well, that's actually a 27.2. And you're like,
Estimate.
That's awesome.
When you're measuring toe, you can't estimate. It's in teeny little bits.
you know you've fallen into the deep end when it's midnight and you've got the string box alignment on your car and you have to wake up at 6 a.m. and you're like, we just got to get that last little bit.
It's almost perfect.
That's almost perfect.
Just one more test drive.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so you've segued already into the one question, and then you did it perfectly again. You mentioned Brian, okay? So every time I see you guys co-driving with Carwin, it reminds me of a Star Wars poster with like Princess Leia, Han Solo, and Yoda, okay? So tell me how much Yoda's using of the Force school benefited you both at the race, or is Yoda just mooching off like free tires, free seat?
I think we tricked him into co-driving with us way more than he's ever attempted to hop in the car. I don't think he ever intended to co-drive with anyone, but he sold his ND and he got his S2000, and we'd run at local events, and I'd be like, all right, Brian, that's your time in the S2000, but don't you want to see like where you could get me ND? And he'd hop in and he'd be like, oh, not again. So we tricked him into co-driving with us nationally for 2 seasons. I think we've learned a ton from him. He's the master of adjusting your car for the event. A lot of people bring their car to an event and just run it however it's set up. And Brian's always like, oh, I think maybe just a tick softer on the front, or something. And he's always turning knobs and making the car a little bit better. So I think I strive to do that. He's also the king of smooth, which.
For me, I always want to find the fastest person I can, and I want to have them drive my car, and I want to ride, and I want to see what it's like to beat the FTD time, and then I want to see how close I can get to that. So whether it's having Marcus co-drive with me or Ryan co-drive with me, like, that's invaluable. Like, I can do the slower time again and again and not understand that it's one turn I'm doing wrong, or I'm just lifting here, I'm not pushing hard enough here. And I think that's really important to be fast, is to have the fast people drive with you, to drive their car, to drive your car, to exchange ideas. I think that's how we as a community get faster, sharing the knowledge that we all have with each other. But I think at the same point, the thing that I like about Brian co-driving is he adjusts the car. So many fast people will change the way they drive for the course, or the grip, or the temperature out there. And he's like, well, you have double adjustable shocks and multi-adjustable sway bars. Why don't we use them, right? So it's like, just one change here makes the car feel so much better, and I don't know what to change or how to adjust it, so like I'm gonna do it the completely wrong way every time. So if I can have that faster person, that pulls me up.
And that brings all of us up.
Yeah.
Yes, I love
Whenever we
it.
come back from runs, I always ask Greg, like, what is the car doing? Just to kind of get used to having that conversation about what it feels like, what it could be doing better, so that we can try and adjust, especially while we're at locals. Like, what does it hurt to play around with things and see what adjusting your sway bar this way does, and understanding how to make the car better.
I love seeing you guys riding together and then coming in and then jumping out of the car, and both of you are just doing stuff, and it's actually really fun to watch, and really it's a great sight actually to see, because you get out and one's wearing the helmet, one's not wearing the helmet, one's running around this side, one's running around that side.
Numbers,
yeah,
the tires, adjust this.
It's just a lot happening, and it's only 2 people.
And some of the locals, it's a pretty quick turnaround for 2 people. So you've got to like fire drill, swap, do all the things, and maybe a third of the time you forget to swap the numbers. But
It's funny that you say that, because it's like you're doing everything else. I'm watching the tires, I'm watching the hood popped and the suspension and tweaking it and running around and tagging each other in and out, and like the numbers are like the last on the list.
Yeah.
Like so.
we'll figure it out in timing.
That's great. Well, thank you both. Thank you, Greg and Jen, for joining us today. We wish you continued good health, keep going fast, and bring home some national jackets real soon. Thank you both.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Back to you in the studio, Danny.
Thank you very much, Greg and Jen. All right. Well, that concludes our podcast episode. Everyone is excused except for the novices. Our novice meeting begins now. This week's novice meeting subject is tires. What are we going to talk about? Not just tires. We're going to talk about pressures. It's the number one question that I get, that Danny gets, that everyone gets at any event. It's, hey, from a novice, right? We're not talking about from the super speeders of the world, the Racer X's. We're talking about from novices. They're very interested that everyone comes out of their car, grabs these tire pressure gauges, runs all around, checks them. Some are letting air out. Some I've seen add air before. Maybe they should have added before the first run, but that's a whole nother conversation. And so, Danny, can we talk a little bit about pressures and kind of what that looks like, maybe the mentality behind it? Because there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all answer here for any car. And I don't think that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to give kind of that setup advice right off the bat. But we do want to talk about it, and we do want to kind of share some thoughts and share some ideas. So, Danny, talk to me a little bit about pressures.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to stress this again. We are not autocross setup experts. Right?
Disclaimer.
So even though, yeah. So as far as autocross setup, we're like goobers because we're not fast.
Goober.
So,
you're not really a goober, but it's hard to set up everyone's car on a podcast, right?
Right. Okay. So the most important thing is this, since this is a novice meeting, we're going to give you the basics on how you deal with your tire pressure. Right. I think in a previous novice meeting, we talked a little bit about getting your car ready and bring it up and then pump your tire up to certain pressures. But now we're going to get in a little bit deep into it. Right. So there's so many things that impacts tire pressures, your tire, the type of your tire, the construction, the rubber material, tread wears. I mean, tread wear is this thing that anybody can stamp any tread wear and say that, hey, it's 200 tread wear. So sometimes you don't want to look at tread wears that important, that close anyway. For the most part, most people will come to autocross either with something that you have no idea about, just bring it as it is, or you have done so many studies and being like internet research scholars to figure out what everybody else is saying on the internet, and you trust them as Bibles, right? Mm-hmm. I think the first thing you come in is approach this with an open mind. The ideal tire pressure is what your factory recommended tire pressure that's on the side of your door, right? Mm-hmm. Because that is what the factory think that what you should be running for most driving. So autocross is going to put loading on the side of the tires. A good recommendation is to go 3 to 4 to 5 PSI higher so that your tire does not roll over. I actually have a little demonstration here. So here, there, right? I actually got this tire from Tire Rack and I didn't buy it. They gave it to me. So that tells you how many tires I've been buying from Tire Rack.
You probably buy more tires from Tire Rack than some like dealers. Like that some
So this is a Michelin tire sitting on OZ rims, and this is actually a replica of the Pilot Sport AS3, right? Which is a sort of a summer performance tire. You can see all these treads here. So now a lot of tires will have these 4 tread blocks because they're really big and wide, right? So when the tire is driving straight, everything on the contact patch is touching the ground. If your tire is leaning over with the same, that this is the outside. If your tire is leaning over and then without camber, your tire is leaning like this. So you're running on these edges. So what's happening is you're running on this edge.
For our podcast listeners that aren't watching what Danny's doing, is he's showing the outside edge of the tire right now.
That's right. I'm showing the outside edge of the tire. So the issue is it's without camber, it's running on the outside edge here. And then it's also running on the second tread block outside edge, the third tread block outside edge, and then the last tread block outside edge, right? So when you run them on that, that's how you get, when you look at your tire, you have these zigzag patterns, right? That's because the edges of the tread block are getting wear, because when the tire's under pressure, these tire treads are actually designed to fold over the necks. So the second block folds over the first block and it wears that edge. The third tread block will fold over the second block and wears the outside edge, and so it's the fourth, right? That's why when you find your tire, you're going to see a lot of wear on the outside edge. And then on the second block is also wear like this, and third block is wear like that. That's the reason why, right? So when you're getting those kind of situations, if you don't have enough tire pressure, it's going to keep on rolling. Now it's going to hit the edge of your rim, and it's going to also damage your sidewall. So this is the reason why that you want to pump up your air pressure so that you're not damaging your tires. Okay, so does that? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the softer the tire is for regular all season use, I really shouldn't be saying that. I think what's happening is the modern tires, especially for racing, they'll all have pretty decent or strong constructions.
Yeah.
Right. They're all pretty stiff. They have a stiff sidewall, right, to minimize flex. Right. So because of that, if you have a regular tire that didn't use that strong of a construction on the inside, the cheaper tire companies usually just adds more and more rubber to build that strength. And the high-tech companies will build a better construction, right? So all season tires, they're probably softer than the racing tires as far as the sidewall construction is concerned. So when you don't have enough air, it may roll over and start damaging your other part of the tires. This is why if you don't know your tires, and then we're just making an assumption that you're running a street tire, and then it's an all-season tire or some sort, and this is why you want to pump up the air pressure, and then so that you're not damaging your tires. And that's the only reason that we're saying that.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Let's assume that you have done a lot of internet research, you've done some racing, and actually knows something about tires. And hopefully by this time you would know the tire pressure is being dictated on exactly what your tire setup is,
right?
How much camber do you have?
Correct.
What's your spring rate, whatever you run a bar, because how much the tire moves and flex, that's a direct result of how much your car is flexing, right? And also you have the same situation as, you have front wheel drive, you have rear wheel drive, and you have all wheel drive. Front wheel drive puts a lot of load on the front tires.
On those fronts. Oh yeah, they're getting beat up. Oh yeah.
Right. Because it's doing the running and it's also doing the turning.
Yep.
And so it's also doing the turning and running.
The braking, the gas, everything.
Right. So you're asking a lot on these tires, right? Yeah. This is the reason why a typical situation, if you have a regular street tire with less camber, I would recommend running somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 40 PSI for your front tires, regardless on what tire it is. Some expert might come back and tell you, oh, I run 25 in the front, right? I mean, we're novices. I say, listen to a goober that's been buying a lot of tires, right? Run between 35 and 40, okay, on your front tires.
And remember, this is novice meeting. We're trying to help the novices.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. We're not trying to help the professionals, right?
No, we're not.
We're not qualified to help the professionals.
No
but
point.
For the novices, run 35 to 40 if you have a front wheel drive car, right?
Yep.
For the rear wheel drive cars, it depends on how heavy your car is. If your car is fairly light, like a Miata or something like that, you can probably run somewhere around 30 to start with, right? And then obviously if you have a race tire, you can run a little lower. Then you have a regular all-season tire, you can run a little bit higher. What I mean by lower and higher is probably 2 to 4 PSI, one way or the other, right? And then that's what you would do with the front wheel. Now the rear tires, it gets a little bit more interesting because a lot of people use rear tires after you autocross for a while. A lot of people use rear tire pressure to control the rotation and grip of the car, right? So the rear tires, usually the car nowadays, the way it's designed, you can have whatever the camber you have is probably sufficient. The front tires is going to be the one that's going to be under cambered. The rear tire is the one that's most likely you can put them in the right range, right? So without talking about alignment, your rear tires, you can probably run somewhere between 30 to 35 for the front wheel drive cars, right? And for the rear wheel drive cars, I like to run 2 PSI lower than the front, right? So if you're running 32 in the front, you run 30 in the back on a rear wheel drive car. If you're running 37 in the front of a front wheel drive cars, you can run anywhere between 30 to 35.
Right. So it's that difference you're talking about between the front and the rear. That's right. And if you have an all-wheel drive car, I typically treat it as a front-wheel drive car, but you can probably run equal pressure front and rear because the all-wheel drive cars, assuming that's a true 50-50 front and rear, the front is going to do the turning
It's also going to do the running, but it's not going to do the 100% of the running. So it's a little bit less, work on the front wheel. Yeah. But a lot of times front wheel will take over, the way, however the system is designed. So I would say maybe run even front and back. And then again, a lot of this depends on how much camber you have too, right? Yeah. But for a normal person that comes in, the best thing to do is to run 3 to 4 PSI above the factory recommended range if you're a completely beginner, right? Yep. Because believe it or not, if you have a front wheel drive car, you put 4 PSI over, it's probably putting you somewhere between that 35 to 40 range. Yeah, regardless of what kind of car it is, right? Yep. So that's what my recommendation would be, right? For tires. And Ada, you want to add something before we can probably talk about some tire choices?
I was gonna just say that what you said about the rear wheel drive cars, putting the rears 2 PSI lower than the fronts, that becomes like a tuning mechanism where you can make that delta from 2 PSI to 1 PSI, and then the handling changes. And as a novice, those are the kind of experiments that I think would be really fun to do at the autocross, right? So you set your tires, you go out there, you do a run, you come back, the tires are a little hotter. You're going to let some air out anyways. So let's play a little game. Let's see what we can learn because we're novices. There's no pressure. We're at nationals. We're hanging out with our friends, right? And it makes autocrossing that much more interesting to be able to play those little games and see, oh, it feels better at 1 PSI difference from the rear. Oh, it feels better with 2 PSI, things like that. So I think that's kind of like, as a true novice, that's something you can take away, that you're allowed to play with your pressures a little bit. You're allowed to see if you can feel that difference, right? So,
yeah. So I want to add one more thing. I mean, I might start getting hate mails or hate emails or nasty comments.
Right? If we get nasty comments or hate mails, that means we made it.
Exactly.
That means we made it.
What I would say is this, right? A lot of people would disagree with me on this one, but I'm going to say it, right? A lot of people worry about tire pressure and they think that tire pressure has to be exact. If you're off by 1, 2 PSI, oh my God, end of the world, right? I don't really give a crap on what tire pressure I'm running nowadays, right? I just want to make sure that it's not wearing my tires so bad that like the next time around, like I'm wasting money, right?
Yeah, no, Danny, that was I want to agree with you. I don't want to fight or disagree or just, because sometimes you'll see on podcasts where they're disagreeing with each other just for fun. I want to agree with you because I feel so strongly that as a novice, go out. The most important thing is just showing up. That is the absolute most important thing. Don't worry if your pressure's off 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 PSI. Like, who cares? Go out there, send it, and you'll learn so much. Just send. So yeah,
right.
I'm with you.
And then like I've seen people come out and they start marking their tires to see where the wear is. Yeah. Hey, you know what? By all means, do it. Right. Everybody needs to go through that stage. Right. Go for it. Sure. But I can tell you, after about 12, 13 years of autocrossing, I finally decided that I don't worry about a 2, 3, 4 PSI gain anymore. It just doesn't. It's not worth it. Right.
You sound like an old man right now, by the way.
Yeah. I I'll tell you, in 2017, I lost my co-driver, right? Yeah. Okay. So the very first time when I went to the Pro Solos without my co-driver, a lot of people offered to, hey, let me set your tire pressure for you, right? Yeah. So I say, well, don't bother. I don't want anybody else to set my tire pressure, right? Yeah. I'm just going to leave it, right? And then I've won more Pro Solos in those 2 years without touching the tire pressure than any other time ever.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
So the thing is once you set them in the ballpark, it's going to increase, it's going to decrease some, right? Yeah. It's going to do strange things. I mean, come on. I mean, tire surface, the debris on track or whatever, will make so many other changes and dictate how things are going to be, right? Than 1 PSI tire pressure. We're not Formula One, right?
We're not.
Well, we're not Formula One.
Oh, sorry.
Or 2 or 3 or 4. Or 6 or 10.
Can we be Super Formula? Let's be Super Formula.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. So anyway, don't worry about these type of things. Set the recommended tire pressure, a few PSI higher, and just go have fun. By the time you have to worry about tire pressures, you already know, hey, camber will impact things and setup will impact things, the surface and tire construction, and the whole thing will impact all. Yep. everything's going to come into play. Once you have enough information of the rest of the stuff, that's how you can decide exactly what pressure that you will run. And you won't ask anybody else, because by that time you won't trust anybody else, because whatever the material or the cars and stuff that you're running it. You're the one that's saying it up.
You know it, yeah.
Right?
And you won't need
so
to be
you would
listening
know
to the
what
novice.
you should run.
Yep. You won't need to listen
That's
to this
right.
part
And
of
you
the
won't even
podcast.
listen here.
Yeah.
So come to think of it, we might not get any hate email at all.
We're not going to get any hate mail. People are going to be like, that
That's
makes
right.
sense.
Yeah. All right. So with that said, I think that we can probably wrap it up on
Cool.
this, right? And we'll find some other stuff to get hate emails or hate mails, but I don't think this one's going to be.
Danny, do you know how I set my pressures when I was a novice? I didn't. And that's how Brian was parked next to me, and he was checking his pressure, and he asked me what I'm running, or he asked me how are my tire pressures, and I said good, and he looked at me like, okay, because he knew I didn't check them, and I was like, they're not flat, because I thought he was asking me, are my tires flat? I had no idea he was asking me about the actual number in the tires. He came over, I think one of them was at 40, one was at 45, one was at 30, so yeah. That's how I actually met him in real life.
What's going to happen is you're going to end up losing like 2 millimeters of contact or 3 millimeters of contact patch with different pressures, right? Mm-hmm. Right. But, at the same time, look, you need to get within like less than an inch to every cone, right? If you can't get to that, then I don't think the tire pressure makes that much of a difference.
Tire pressure is not going to matter when you're 15 feet off the apex.
That's right. So think about that, and then just have that of less of a concern. Don't be concerned too much with that. Enjoy the event, enjoy the run, focus on where you're running, keep on going fast.
There you go.
And with that, thank you again for joining our podcast, and we hope you find this information fun and informative.
And until next time, keep those tires on that track with the right air pressures and that wing in the back.
And with any tire pressure. All right. See you next time.
All right. And now it's time for everyone's favorite segment, Ask Uncle Danny. So this is a good one. So our good question having friend, Stuart Miller, asked us a little bit about karts. So I'm going to modify his question just a little bit to make it a little bit more poignant for us. So I'm going to ask you, Uncle Danny, based on Stuart's original question, can you tell us a little bit about karts in autocross? And can you throw in a little Uncle Danny history with karts? Because I know you used to have one.
Yeah, I used to have like 5. Okay, so I can share some of the story, but I am really not the original person, the DMV area that races go-karts, right?
Who was it, Brian?
No, the very first person is actually Marshall Cohn.
Really? I didn't know that. Okay.
I think Marshall is the person that brought the racing go-karts into autocross, which is a SCCA class. Used to call F125.
Okay.
So F stands for Formula, 125 stands for 125cc. Mm-hmm. So there's F125. And then later on, when they started organizing and changing classes, they changed it to kart mod.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the genesis or the history of how the SCCA classing for karts became.
Okay.
Right.
I don't see karts anymore.
Are
they just not around in this region right now?
Yeah. It's those things are actually move up, they go up and down.
Okay.
Right. Personally, I think that the most fun I've ever had in autocrossing was racing go-karts with like 22 guys from DC.
Mafia. You guys were the go-kart mafia.
I know, we have our own heat. It's outrageous.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
So the person that actually were instrumental of all the karting stuff is the Garfield family.
Yes.
Right. I couldn't quite get Craig Garfield to race go-karts, but I did have a go-kart that chased him over the lot once.
Nice.
But Brian Garfield and Julian Garfield and Carson Garfield and Lisa Garfield, they were all go-kart racers. And then, in fact, when they used to go race, they essentially have an enclosed trailer, a small one, and then they stack all 4 carts inside, and they tow it with the minivan, and then the whole family goes, right?
That's awesome.
So that counts for go-karting folks now, right? And then after the second year of my autocrossing, I started getting crazy ideas, and I want to be a Formula car driver instead of an autocrosser. Yeah. So I actually went out and then I bought a Formula car. I bought a Formula Ford, and then I bought another Formula Ford. Then I realized I am not a Formula car driver. I suck at it. I don't even know what to do with it. And then I realized that, I can spend half the money and buy a go-kart and go faster and a lot cheaper and a lot more fun. So I started bugging Brian Garfield about, hey, what do we do? So at the time, we have quite a few guys are doing go-karts, right? Don Miller and the old-timer guys that are doing karts. They used to have my best buddy, Mike Klein, right? So there were 7 or 8 of those guys already.
Was Joshua West racing them back then?
No, Josh actually came afterwards.
He came after. Okay.
Yeah. Josh was running his American muscle cars, right?
Nice.
He was already making noises and all that stuff. So karting is like fine, So there were about 7 or 8 guys that were doing this consistently. So when I joined them, I became the slow one. But the funniest part is I bought a go-kart. I was running around the first event, of the year. And then one person walked up to me and say, "Hey, Danny, my name is Edwin. I just started this, and I run Civics, and you guys look like it's fun, right? So can you show me how to get into this, right?" So I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you just come on over one Saturday afternoon to my office, and I'm just going to run in the parking lot."
Oh my God, I love it.
Right? And then they say, "Okay, well, can I bring a friend of mine?" Right? So he brought Justin Neal.
No way.
So my friend Edwin Liu and Justin Neal, they came, and then my other friend Frank Weichel, I work with him. So they never ridden karts before, and Frank brought his daughter.
That's so cool.
And then Frank brought his dad, who was like 75 years old. So we just sat in the parking lot, and everybody's take turn driving my go-kart.
That is so cool.
It's super cool. And then of course the building security came over and tried to kick us out. But
of course they did.
But I told them that, hey, I'm the head of IT in this building, and they left.
Oh no, they did not leave.
No, they didn't say a word. They said, "Okay, that's cool," and they left.
Oh my God, that's so maybe they wanted a ride.
I know, yeah. So I offered them to ride, but they said, "Oh, that's okay." But we ended up hanging out for like 3 hours and just running go-karts all over the place.
That is so
but
cool.
Now that parking lot has a Chick-fil-A now, so we can't do that anymore. Used to be empty.
My pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure. So slowly all the guys started joining up, and then my friend Brian Charlet actually came down from like Finger Lakes region and then joined us in one of those events.
Cool.
And then all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 guys from Philly are getting into it, right?
That's so
cool. Craven and all those guys. And then those are actually the genesis of the Philly region who, their karting is still going on.
That's awesome.
Right? There's still people running go-karts, and because their junior kart actually became the adult people now. Right. And they stuck and came modified. And then unfortunately, majority of the DC folks here, once they grew up, Julian, Carson, and all the rest of the guys. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Dylan used to run that as well. Dylan is the 18-year-old that raced against the Motor Week Carlos in a Miata racing contest.
Oh wow.
At Summit Point. That's actually a Motor Week episode.
Oh, that's so cool.
I don't recall. Maybe Dylan didn't, but I could have swear that Dylan used to run with us. At one time, there was one of the events that we have 24 go-karts.
That's awesome.
And like 12 or 13 juniors in go-karting that ran with us, like 30 some carts, and we have our own parking section. Wow. We have our own rules.
Yep.
It's pretty crazy, right? So yeah, so to answer Stuart's question, I don't want to drag it out further and further, but yes, that's my go-karting career. I ran in SCCA Nationals for 4 years. Mm-hmm. The second year I ran there, I purposely registered as number 1, and then we ran first thing in the morning Tuesday, so I didn't go off course, so I was leading the Nationals.
That means that you were leading Nats.
I was leading the Nat. I was leading Nats. I was leading Nats for 5 minutes because
top packs and top bra.
I was leading Nats for 5 minutes because everybody else that came after me, they all went off course because it was too slick. And then those are definitely the good days. The most fun I ever had awesome. Racing was with the go-kart.
So Danny, I know that SCCA allows karts. Do you know about like Porsche or BMW, Mercedes? Do they allow karts, or do you not know?
I don't think they do. I have not seen any other group that allows go-karts. Okay. Go-karting is a little bit interesting, right? There's easier ways to run them, and there's more difficult way to run them. There are definitely karts, like Rotexes or World Formula stuff. You can press the button to start.
Yeah.
I didn't really keep it up with it that well, but I think now they're allowing 4 strokes as well.
Wow.
Right. So the equivalence of 250cc 4-stroke cars, the competition, the competition equivalent is the 2-stroke F125s. I mean, 125cc 2-stroke cars.
Mm-hmm.
But when we race, we all use Honda 2-stroke 125 that comes in their dirt bikes. That's the motor that we use. They do the special work and all that stuff, and then and modify, the intakes and all that stuff, and that's within the rule set. So we typically get about 40 horsepower.
Wow.
Are the cars, but those are those carts are finicky, right? I mean, they only run at the highest RPM to generate the power band. So shifting became critical. How you start, and then you want to continue revving at a high range. So it's an art to learn how to shift and then put yourself in the correct power band. Right. And then at the same time, you don't want to bog at the launch. You want to make sure that it doesn't get too rich. So you have to worry about tuning and all of that stuff. And it gets hot. If you touch any part of the hoses and radiators and exhaust, you burn yourself, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things going on there. So I don't blame the rest of the, autocross groups for not having carts.
Sure.
Because, having a car also equals you need to know what you're doing, right?
Yes.
Because if you don't know what you're doing, you stall on the 125cc, you're resorting to push start, right? So at the grid, we learn how to put the car on the block so the rear wheel is up in the air, and then we actually use some kind of like a clamp or something, and then we open up the throttle a little bit and hold the clamp so that it holds the throttle in place to open slightly, and we take a strap and then we spin the tires while it's in second gear, and that's our equivalence of a push start, right? That's how we get the car started. But the problem is when you're on course, you're stalled. You either have to jump out and do the bobsled. Which for me, it's like impossible. I'm fat and slow, right?
Okay.
But you can get somebody else to push you.
Yeah.
But if they don't push you right, 2 things happens. One, always when they try to push you from the bottom of the car, they always grab the exhaust.
And
so they burn themselves up, right?
Dangerous. Yep.
And then the second thing is if they do it right, they push on your shoulder and they move it too fast, and you take off, and then and always somebody lose their balance and land on their face. Right. So there's so many things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's I definitely don't blame other groups for not having that, because you in order to run karts, your organizers and everybody needs to be aware of how that operates.
Sure.
Right? So at the heyday, when we have 30 some karters, including juniors, everybody knows what's going on.
Yep.
Right. Because some people don't like it. Some people hates the noise, and some people hates the smoke, and some people hates everything. Right. Yeah. And then the people they're doing are having a lot of fun, so they don't really care.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, it's there was a lot of education going on, so that we're educating everybody else around us to say, okay, here, thank you for giving us special provision to do this, but these are the things that you should know. You don't want to put your hands on here when you push someone, and watch it when you push it. You don't want to, all that stuff.
Danny, can I tell you a secret about when I was starting to autocross, there was a kart heat. That heat was for the karts.
Yes.
And I always asked if I can work that heat, because everyone hated the sound. Everyone hated the smell. It was like very visceral, right? Like the senses as the cart goes by you very fast. It's not scary, but it's like, whoa, right? I loved it because it was the shortest work assignment.
Yeah. No, so
I loved it.
So what happened? I think there was one time there might be like 14 or 15 kids running Formula Juniors. I mean, so they're in those classes. And then the junior karters gets their own heat. Because the thing with karts versus cars is if you have a car running behind you or in front of you, sometimes you don't see them because they're so low down the ground. Sure. So for the adults, they will put everybody together running against mods and stuff like that. And then because we're adults, we're on our own, right? I mean, we need to worry about our own safety. But some kids could start at 5 years old. So some kids don't even know how to get around,
Correct.
And then they're out there karting. So
I was always trying to help point. I remember. And,
so
and it helped.
Yeah. So what happened is Craig Garfield came up with this great idea that let's put all the karters in one heat, and then we run them, right after lunch. And then they just take up that next 20 to 25 minutes and take all 4 of their runs, right, consecutively with no other traffic. So the way they do it is, So people like Ivante, she was an RE for the region, but she'll volunteer to do worker assignments. Ivante will assign people to say, okay, here, everybody just have one person covers one corner, and
Yep.
call in for the kids, right? Because the kids usually don't hit cones. They're not going fast enough to hit cones. Even if they do, you can just run around.
Yep.
I mean, you're probably heavier than a cart anyway. Right. So
If they hit me, they're going to damage the cart. I'll be
that-
all right.
Yeah, that's right. So what happened is while the kids are running, you have the workers out there for that 25, 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And then that satisfies your work requirement, right? And that also take that you're not holding up traffic or stopping cars while the kids are running.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So you're offering safety for the kids,
Yep.
and you make the event short. And then usually they start right after lunchtime. So just make it an hour and a half lunch.
Yep.
Right? So sometimes the event doesn't end until 12:45. So you have a 15-minute lunch. But since juniors runs up right at 1:00, now you got a 45-minute lunch.
There you go.
Yeah. So it doesn't hurt anyone.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
Not
it doesn't hurt anyone. And then especially the folks that are running, we used to run morning and afternoons. So once you're done with the morning, you're gone anyway.
Yep.
Right. So the afternoon guys, they might have to start like 1:30 or whatever. But it's okay.
It was fun.
Yeah. This way everybody have fun. Yeah. So I guess to quickly answer Stuart's question, yeah, that's my, if you ask me if I ever done this, yeah. I mean, I did that for 4 years until one time when I was 48 years old, I was in a national event. And then we did something to piss off the timing trailer. So they let us sit there for 20 minutes under like 100-degree sun. And then I was so dehydrated, I can't even get out of the car at the end.
Oh, that
Right?
sucks.
And then I told myself that's it.
You were done.
I was done after that. Right. I don't want to say we outgrew that. People started going out and trying to pick up different cars. So I'll give you some strange examples, right? So I started with Brian Garfield. Now the Garfield family drives a Stalker, which is a Caterham. Right. So they're going to a Caterham now. I myself, I'm in a Porsche 911. Right. So Edwin, my buddy Edwin, right? Edwin has a GTR.
And an NSX.
Yeah, and an NSX.
I
And
love
then and Justin has the fastest modified C6 time attack car guys next to Justin Peachy's car.
He's got time trial records, Danny.
Yes. So that gives you an idea of the people that we ran karts with. I mean, we're in there because we love cars. And if you go back to any of these guys and ask them what's their best time is, during their autocross career, I can promise you they would say the go-kart days.
Karts. Yep.
Yeah. So
That's awesome.
I will end with that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Danny. And thank you for another great Ask Uncle Danny. And thank you, Stuart, for the questions. Keep the questions rolling in. Post them in the Facebook group, DMV Autocross. Send me a message. Send Danny a message. However you want to get in touch with us, Ask Uncle Danny.
All right. So I'll see you guys next one.
See ya.